Thank you so much, Mr. Dewald. Nice to have you, Mr. Pretorius. Thank you so much. Can you please tell us a little bit about you and get to know more better about who's the CEO of the SAM, Spectrum Utility Management?
Good morning, Mr. Matlala. Thank you for this opportunity. Dewald Pretorius is just a normal, average bloke, born in South Africa, a big patriot, love my country to bits. I'm a Christian by values. I believe that we have to serve our neighbor with kindness and respect and make a difference into people's lives. I think that forms, and I'm a normal average family man living on a small game farm just outside Pretoria. That gives you a bit of a background who I am. Normal bloke. I believe that we have evolved over the years into a very dynamic environment. Since my beginning in my career, I was trained to be a software developer a long time ago in my life. Don't ask me to do anything like that anymore. I've got clever people doing that now for me. We evolved over the years. My passion was always to get involved with, where the taxi eats the car type of business, covering basic services to everybody, make sure that, conform to human basic rights, access to clean water, sustainable water, cheap water, access to sustainable electricity, cheap electricity. That forms the basis of what we used to do when we started. My background was to write financial systems to municipalities. So we were in the core, in the middle of all of that over the years. The business obviously evolved. That started in 92. So the business evolved over the years to where we are today. In 92, we were relevant. Today, we're still relevant. So we're doing something correct as far as that goes. That's our passion. That's what we live for. We believe we can add a lot of value in terms of South African derived solutions. What we'll do further in this interview, we'll talk about South African technology, not European, Chinese, or American. It is derived in this country, it's homegrown here and developed in South Africa. So we're very proud about that.
Oh, beautiful. Tell us about this amazing Spectrum Utility Management, because I know it also aligns with the smart city. Tell us a little bit, take us on a journey about it. How did you come up with it and how did you arrive where we are today?
Yeah, look, I think to do that, 32 years is a long time. So I have to take a bit of a journey going back. In between 92 and 2000, a big focus was at that stage to downsize municipalities from what we called old mainframe systems into open systems. In layman terms, what that meant is we could reduce the operational costs of municipalities and ICT services by 60% as far as costs goes. And we could improve the service delivery or the efficiency cycles by 70% in doing so. So you can imagine it was a major impact on local government over that period. Since then, we moved into the Y2K environment. As you all remember, the Y2K environment. We were servicing at that stage around 80 municipalities in South Africa, and we were standardizing the whole of Namibia on our financial systems at that stage, except for 2 or 3 cities, if I can recall. The good story about 2000 was that we were the first company that could certify all our clients compliant by Y2K 7 months prior to Y2K. That was a big thing those years, and we were very proud of that. Since the 2000s, the company evolved into what we call data integrity. And the reason why that happened was, if you look at the history of local government in South Africa, we were over 900 municipalities in the old regime, in the apartheid era. And we had to that was reduced to 257 municipalities, which was now. Now you can imagine the pressure at those years. We were part of that. We were still young and ambitious. You had to amalgamate a lot of municipalities into one. And with that amalgamation, a lot of pressure was obviously put onto systems to get the data consolidated. And unfortunately, mistakes were made and data was not clean, if I can call it that. So the new era then, after 2000s to around 2006, was to develop solutions to clean up the data mess that was created over that time. In many cases, that data till today has not necessarily 100% been resolved. What that does, if you don't have the right correct data, you don't have the correct management information to manage your municipalities. Now, that is a problem. So what we did in those years, we pioneered data cleansing in 2003, if I can recall the dates, why we were appointed with Security Corps those years at the Ekurhuleni municipality to clean 1 million stands data. What that did, however, it was we all underestimated that project. It became a very complex project. But the good thing about that project was we learned a lot out of that project, and we could develop tools and systems to make it easier to cleanse data going forward and cheaper. Meaning we were able then to supply the technology to other municipalities to conclude the same solutions. So we were heavily involved in data integrity and data cleansing projects over that period from 2000 to 2006 around. In that time, we also realized that when you clean data, it can become dirty again. And so what then, and now we're getting into the fancy stuff now where the smart city thing becomes starting to get shape. We had to start looking at intelligent ways to allow the municipalities to communicate with the consumers. Okay? That meant that we had to find a way to communicate to the metering or the electricity infrastructures and the water infrastructures electronically. Now, at that stage, the world did not have solutions necessarily for us. You're familiar with the terminology smart metering. That came in more recent. Those years, there was nothing called a smart meter. With our ability as SUM, we were able then to start manufacturing technology to retrofit on all infrastructure to make it intelligent. So that meant that we could communicate to the entire infrastructure electronically from where you generate electricity right through to the house, and the same with water, from where you produce water to get to the house. What happens with that water? Every kiloliter of water that gets into the system, what happens to it through the whole system to the house? And the same with electricity. When it's generated, what happens with the electricity from generation to the house? Now, the problem at those stages was connectivity was very expensive. So you had to work with your typical GSM solutions, which is your typical SIM card solutions that we have with Vodacom, Cell C, MTN, and the service providers. And unfortunately, that was just too expensive to put IoT GSM devices all over the place. The communication cost was just too expensive. At that stage, we had to start working on other solutions, how to communicate to the infrastructure. So we quickly realized that a thing called a street light becomes very important. Now, the reason why street lights became important is because of the height. We call it vertical real estate. And that enables us to put our own connectivity methodologies in place to communicate to the infrastructure without using necessarily the SIM cards or the technology supplied by the cell phone companies or telecom. Okay. So we invested heavily into that, and then basically we won a world award of the best energy efficiency project in the world by starting to get involved with streetlights. So the streetlight idea was not necessarily to get involved with that or that level of accolades, but we won that award, and we're very proud of that award. But what happened was, because of that prize money we won, we were allowed by the municipality in Nelson Mandela Bay to deploy our connectivity solution in a POC format, proof of concept format. So what we then did, and that is now prior to 2015-16, we've utilized Walmer Township as the basis of the South African derived smart city methodology. So what I meant by that was that we were able, through our technology, to deploy connectivity through high-mast Apollo lights. That's typically your area lighting within the township areas, and utilize those towers as what we call connectivity towers or Wi-Fi enabled towers. What that meant is we could cover the whole of Walmer Township on the Wi-Fi, and we could then obviously read entire infrastructure on the Wi-Fi. We could communicate with water, electricity infrastructure, connectivity through surveillance, security. We could handle cable theft devices, everything within that space. So that is where the uniqueness comes in now of spectrum utility management. Innovation comes in. We have now a system developed in South Africa that can manage the entire infrastructure environment. I'm going to give you an example why that's important, and it relates back to, I think, our founding in terms of downsizing, as I explained to you earlier, the systems make it cost effective. This is the new cycle, or more modern cycle, where normally in municipalities you need between 15 and 20 systems to do what this one system does. So what it does, it creates it's obviously a far more cost-effective environment because you can consolidate those services into one system. Okay. And secondly, what it does, it's easier to manage the integrity of your data because you only have to have to query one database instead of 16 or 17 databases to consolidate information. So in practice, it means that you have now a system that now can give you accurate information of what happens in your infrastructure real time. I think that and that is where we get to smart city. That means now that we can now combine data as a utility besides water and electricity. So now data can also be supplied as a basic service to your indigenous communities, meaning that you get free basic water, free basic electricity, now you can get free basic data.
Wow. In communities, speaking of data and energy efficiency, in the communities where they don't have access to infrastructures like Wi-Fi, how are you able to access them through the app?
Look, so the app is a normal app that's downloaded on Android and Play Store and your Apple stores. So you can download that app. If you don't have Wi-Fi, then you can still access it through a GSM platform. So it's absolutely just an app you download onto any of your phones, and you can access that app, and that app will give you the opportunity to communicate with the municipalities transparently. Because the intention of the app, and the reason why we got into the app environment, or mobile app environment, sorry, just to put it that way, currently there's a discourse between municipalities and their residents, if I can call it that. So the idea on the app is to take the smart, intelligent infrastructure that we create through our solutions now and allow the consumer to participate into that transparency, meaning that what the municipality now see, you can see as well. So what it does, it improves service delivery a hell of a lot in terms of how transparent we communicate with our residents. And I think that's the important part. So the more transparency we get, the more intelligent we get, the better we get in service and getting service delivery up to standards. The other value is that if we start doing that, the biggest enemy we have today in South Africa local government is the vandalism and theft within infrastructure. And if we don't address that problem, we will keep on increasing tariffs to our consumers, which can't pay it eventually, and municipalities cannot keep on asking 100% payments with a tariff structure that is not economically viable, and the whole system can collapse if you don't address those issues. So in terms of our model, the intention is where some is deployed, all infrastructure will be transparently managed. We will know where theft is taking place real time within the infrastructure, and we can do something about it. What do we want to achieve ultimately? We want to achieve a cost of services that's economically competitive to anywhere in the world in terms of our utility costs, so that we can draw investment into our cities and we can create jobs and get people out of poverty.
I love it so much. Speaking of the poverty and the people, I know normally you emphasize on for the people, by the people. Tell us more about some of your initiatives and programs that you're doing with upcoming entrepreneurs and technology. How you SAM works together with any community where you're involved? Okay,
that's a very important question, because I mean, the technology in SAM must be utilized by everybody, and I think people must participate in the SUM projects. Now, I'm going to try to simplify the answer by saying that when we haven't touched on the investment part yet in terms of our investment capabilities into infrastructure, but the principle is that we will always localize our businesses, meaning that we will identify skills, capacity, SMMEs, depending on how the environment looks like. And the intention will be that we will heavily invest into that. Remember, we're not going to import technology and people from Gauteng. That's not the intention. If we work nationally, we have to work with local communities and empower those local communities. So the whole methodology is built around local empowerment. So SUM the technology will obviously be developed centrally, but I mean the usage and the support of that technology will be regionalized into the areas where we work, so that the benefit, or at least 70% of the benefit that comes out of these projects, stays within the economy of those cities and those towns.
Oh, beautiful. There's a term that always pops up: smart cities. Smart cities. So I know SUM, you are also leading in that capacity. Tell us a little bit about the plans and what is the plans for the future about smart cities.
Okay, so I think we have done a lot in terms of the technology part, as I explained earlier to you. The company or the technology that we utilize makes infrastructure management transparent. I think that's the important part. The biggest challenge was that how to afford this. It's not a cheap exercise. So part of the innovation going forward now is to play our role, like the President has requested the private sector to start playing an active role in the public sector space, especially on the infrastructure investment. The problem that you have as a general statement in local government, the municipalities, is that it's not an investable environment necessarily, because of the theft and vandalism that goes there out there, and the audit outcomes of the Auditor General that's always been adverse or bad. So it's not a destination of investment necessarily. And we put in a lot of work as an organization since COVID got us a bit, to break a bit of the momentum that we had, is to how to invest into an uninvestable. We have all the technology, we have all the know-how, all the skills available, but where's the money? Now, you must remember, we used to compete, still today, compete with international companies. Now, they're big quickly to tell you they'll come with their own money. But what they don't forget to tell you is that when they bring their money, they bring their own technology as well. So what it does, it kills South African technology. So we were always on the back foot, that we always had to compete with companies, and our commercial banks was not even interested in local government because it's not an investable or bankable institutions. So what then happened is we partnered with a company called MNP Capital. The shareholding is owned by DMB Holdings, which I represent from an ICT perspective. And then Dr. Matthew Sposa from MNP Capital. Now the marriage was a marriage in heaven, in the sense that MNP Capital could bring what we call high finance investments also to the space, to the frame. So that meant we had now technology on the one side, and now we had high finance or investments on the other side. Now, instead of having these things outside of the company, it became an integral part internally of the company. Today, I can be proud to say that we have achieved the following, that we are able now, as private sector, as SUM, to invest into an uninvestable local government market. That means that I can bring in private sector to assist government to accelerate the turnaround that's required within local government by reinvesting into infrastructure. We know the problem that we have with infrastructure, it's ailing, it's old, and we need to address those issues. So besides technology, we also now come with the investment portfolios to assist. So the short term that now happens, it's going to happen now. We've set up a new POC, profit concept model, in Nelson Mandela Bay, again, for all to see. You guys are welcome to come and join us there. We will physically show you what we're doing there. Is where we're going to also go ahead with what we used to do in Nelson Mandela Bay by deploying a Wi-Fi enabled platform. But this time, the intention is to blend data and electricity into one solution. And why do we want to do that? We want to bring the discipline back in paying for electricity by communities. But the incentive will be, this is part of the service delivery part, that as you buy electricity, you'll get data. So we try to merge the discipline with data into the ill discipline of electricity transactions into one. We believe this is going to be a game changer for the industry, for Africa. As a basis, the methodology is simple. If there's no electricity, there's no economy. And we have to secure and protect the revenue generated by electricity so that we can protect our economies. And for that, I think the trade-off on data is not a bad one. But I must qualify that we must start reducing costs to our consumers on electricity. And the only way we can do that is going to be by rejuvenating the infrastructure and get rid of theft and vandalism within the infrastructure. Water, I just want to add something before I forget. Yes. Water is the sleeping one. That's actually the bigger problem. So water, and the reason why I didn't emphasize too much on water up to now is because if you don't have stabilized electricity, you don't have water. Water has got a different problem. Water is not a theft problem necessarily, but it's infrastructure problem. So we're running 60% losses on clean water as an average throughout the country. That's not sustainable. So that's why we have this problems where so much money is owed to water boards, because the municipalities, even if you collect at 100% and you have a 60% loss, it's still not viable. Same with electricity. If you have a 100% collection rate, you see with 30% plus losses, it's not a viable business. So you have to address the losses. And hence, the solutions that some brings to the table now is we're bringing the money now to resolve that matter, because it's more an infrastructure related problem than a theft problem. So the infrastructure needs to be addressed. So in a nutshell, we have now a turnkey solution as a South African company of managing the infrastructure on a sustainable manner to reduce cost to the consumers and to bring investment into our cities, back into our cities, and then ultimately get rid and alleviate the poverty issues. From here, we're going to do it in South Africa. This is our country. We must start here. We don't start anywhere else. And then the intention, obviously, throughout this year, you'll see stories coming or media articles coming. We'll expand into Africa. This is evident. It's going to happen. I mean, we don't have. This is just logical. It's going to happen. That's why the methodology that we have is services to the people by the people. That motto, that mentality will go because everybody is part of the same solution. It's not like we're sitting here and everybody sits there. It's one solution.
Beautiful. Talking of the last question, Dr. Matthews Posse is one of our men of influence that has been nominated to come. How is the relationship working with such a Dewald, a custodian, the man who he showed me his pen in the office. He used the pen to sign the Constitution. How is the relationship working with the man?
It's fantastic. I think you can imagine. Well, you just introduced him now to me as well. That's exactly who he is. He's a stalwart. He's an example. He's a mentor. I'm a businessman. I've always been a businessman. He had the privilege to be a politician and a businessman. So I think from that perspective, there's a lot of value that Dr. Posa adds to the organization. And he's not a silent partner, by the way. He's part of the executive, the board. So it's not like we don't leave him there in a corner. He must come here. He must share his wealth of knowledge with us. And that's happening on a real-time basis. So from that perspective, he's a good friend. He's a good mentor. He adds a lot of value to our organization, and I will always be grateful to him for that.
Wow, thank you so much. Mr. Pretorius, I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you and also to get to know more about some spectrum utility management. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.